Hello people of the interwebs, my name is Derek Gilmore and welcome back to another YouTube video. We are here with our post-week 1 NFL Power Rankings. Some movement, a couple teams falling out of the top 10, otherwise a lot of stuff mostly the same. Let's kick it off with number 1. I have the San Francisco 49ers jumping Kansas City to take the number 1 spot. They beat the Jets 32-19 last night at home. Jordan Mason coming in, getting the late start after McCaffrey ends up missing the game because of that calf injury. He looks crazy good. Purdy doing what he needs to do, looked pretty sharp, although the Jets gave up a lot of wide open looks, but to hit those, did what he needed to do, looked pretty good. Ayuk, after getting that extension, drops a touchdown pass that he normally catches. That'll be something worth keeping an eye on. Next week, they have Minnesota, who won as well this week. It's a road game, could be a trap game, but I expect them to take care of business, especially going against Sam Darnold, a quarterback that they have had, or that they did have for a year or two in that system. Next, at number 2, I have Kansas City dropping a spot, and this is more about San Francisco looking as good as they did last night. They beat Baltimore 27-20. I did miss most of the first half of this game. I ended up taking a 30-minute nap that turned into a 4-hour nap. You know how it goes. But yeah, Kansas City kept control for most of the game until the very end there, where Lamar leads that crazy drive that nearly goes to OT, but we'll talk more about that later when we get to the Ravens. Xavier Worthy looking really sharp with a couple explosive plays, only 3 touches, but 2 touchdowns, roughly 70 all-purpose yards. Expect that role to grow more going forward, even if Hollywood Brown comes back this week. Rashee Rice looked really good, but Kelsey, in his age 34 season, I know it's only week 1, but he looked pretty absent. Didn't really notice him that much. We'll see if that trend continues. Next, at number 3, I have the Detroit Lions. Same spot as last week. They beat the Rams 26-20 in OT. Detroit mostly kept control of this game until that Kupp touchdown drive in the fourth quarter there. Goff doesn't have his best night, which is kind of surprising because they were playing in the Dome, which is an environment he normally thrives in. Monty was pretty efficient on the ground, getting more carries. Still technically that lead running back. Jamison Williams with great game. Looks like he could have a huge season for this team, which is good because that wide receiver room is not that deep. And unfortunately, Amon-Ra St. Brown only gets 3 catches for 13 yards. I drafted him in the first round of my fantasy league that I do with my family, so hopefully he can pick it up, or I'm going to have a long year. Next week, they have Tampa Bay in a playoff rematch. I do expect them to win that game. Number 4, I have Philly jumping 2 spots after that 34-29 win against Green Bay in Brazil. They had a few sloppy mistakes. Jalen Hurts did not look good. He had what should have been 4 turnovers. Technically goes in the box, scores 3 with the 2 picks and the 1 fumble. But they grind out the win. Saquon Barkley is quite the debut. My girlfriend and I she was making fun of me after Saquon Barkley got 3 touchdowns when I told her he was a bad draft pick at number 5 overall in our fantasy league. We will see how that ages. I tried to tell her it was only 1 game, but hey, if I have to eat my words, then so be it. Zach Bond, very underrated pickup. He was a former second-round pick from New Orleans, I believe. He looked really good. Very underrated signing and 2 sacks. Next week, Philly will go up against Atlanta. I do expect them to win that game. Hopefully Atlanta can look a little better and make this game more interesting. Number 5, I have Baltimore dropping a spot from 4 to 5. They lost 20-27 at Kansas City. Their ground game was very interesting because Lamar Jackson looked absolutely amazing, and Derrick Henry looked like he was in his 30s. He looked kind of slow, 3.5 yards per carry, never really had that big run, no role at all in the receiving game. Very interesting game. We'll kind of have to monitor this going forward. And what's going to be talked about a lot, and what has been talked about a lot, is how this final drive ends. So he misses Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson, of course, misses Zay Flowers in the end zone, wide open. Looked like a miscommunication there. Looked like Zay was expecting to stop and have Lamar hit him. Lamar looked like he wanted him to keep going. I think that, scrutiny he got for that throw was a little overblown. And then finally, of course, Isaiah Likely with that crazy game, but the toe just out of bounds. It prevents overtime. I think Kansas City did deserve to win this game, but Baltimore making it really fun there at the end. Next week, they're going to host Vegas. I expect them to run all over them and destroy them. Number 6, we have Dallas, who's going to jump up 3 spots. They win 33-17 against everybody's least favorite team in the league, the Cleveland Browns. Kicked ass defensively. They got 2 touchdowns. 2 interceptions off of Deshaun Watson. I want to say they got a couple fumbles as well, 6 sacks. I mean, really a clinic there for Dallas's defense. They didn't really do much on offense, but they didn't really have to. Dak was fine. He just got that contract, which $60 million a year. I think it's actually even a little more than that. I think it was $250 for 4 years. That's a lot of money, and when you're not going against the Cleveland Browns offense, you're going to have to play a little better than that if you're going to take this team far in the playoffs, which he has not been able to do to this point. They used CeeDee Lamb as a rusher a couple times, which I found interesting. Not really a role that we expected him to see. We'll kind of have to monitor if this ends up being, something he also does going forward, giving him an even higher floor for production, especially in fantasy. Next week they got New Orleans at home, who of course beat the ever-living daylights out of Carolina. Could be an interesting game there. Number 7, we have the Houston Texans, who are going to stay in the same place, eking out a win on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. They gave up a couple too many big plays, but really, the defense was fine, I thought. They were very controlled offensively. Joe Mixon have a debut, 30 carries, 130 yards. They get that Joe Mixon all year, then Houston's going to climb up these power rankings, especially with everything they already have on offense and this defense that we continue to expect to improve. Diggs gets the 2 touchdowns. He really is the day in fantasy, but it's very clear that Nico Collins is the number 1 here. He has that crazy catch, like 30 yards down the field. And then that other catch that he had the knee go down inbounds to get a catch, which was really delightful to watch, especially with him also on my fantasy team. Next up, they're going to host Chicago, who won. I expect them to win that game as well. At number 8, we have the Miami Dolphins, who eked out a gritty win, 20-17 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. After starting down 17-3, they score 17 unanswered to end the game. They massively outgained this Jaguars team. Probably a little better than the score looks. Really, it was this dynamic trio that they have on offense receiving. It was Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane, what he's doing in the receiving game. All of them put up crazy production. And to briefly touch on the Tyreek Hill incident, he had a great game after that really scary video that came out about him getting detained by police. Hopefully something good can come of that. That was not fun to watch. Next up, they're going to host Buffalo, who you will also hear about in this video. Should be a very interesting game. Next, at number 9, we have the Los Angeles Rams, who lost on the road to Detroit in overtime. The story of this game is Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. That connection is back, man. 14 catches for Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford, 350 passing yards. Just that duo is insane. Unfortunately, Puka Nacua does bang up his knee. He promptly went on IR, we found out on Monday. Hopefully he gets better soon because he's quite the talent. And finally, the Rams' first-round pick, Jared Verse, the first-round pick they've made in what feels like 10 years. Pretty nice debut for him, too, with a sack and a couple QB hits. And then at number 10, Buffalo, who was not in the top 10 last week, is going to crack the top 10 with a 34-28 win against the Cardinals at home. They started down 17-3, but then they really controlled the game for the rest of this way. Josh Allen was nearly perfect, which they're going to kind of need from him, I think, most weeks to get wins. He has 4 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground, which fortunately neither of those could go to James Cook. Definitely would have helped me out in my fantasy league. The we saw the receiving workload kind of split. I don't think anyone really topped 50 yards, and if someone did, it was like right about there. I think it was Keon Coleman at like 51 yards. Kind of for the time being, gonna expect to see that. Not really any crazy games, maybe a spike week here, spike week there, but really kind of a death by like a committee type of deal there. Dalton Kincaid, though, only 2 targets. Very unfortunate to see, especially for how highly he was drafted in fantasy. Um, Hopefully he can pick it up going forward because they got big expectations for him. And he's really going to need to step up, especially early with a lot of unproven options running the show here. And then finally, our honorable mention, the number 11 spot this week will go to the New York Jets, who are going to technically drop down a spot, even though the honorable mention, we technically don't count as part of the top 10. It's the number 11 spot. They lost at San Francisco last night, 32-19. Had a couple really weird mistakes. I mean, Breece Hall fumbled. You're not going to expect to see that every game. Aaron Rodgers throws a pick, so it makes his box score look a lot worse, but it was a really weird pick. The ball was thrown behind Garrett Wilson, not perfect placement, but it's like a fine throw. Just happens to get a crazy deflection and ends up in the hands of 49ers defender there. Very interesting to see Allen Lazard leading the team in all-purpose yards. Probably not going to see that again this year. I thought that was a little interesting nugget there. And then Sauce is a blitzer with a sack and another QB hit. Very interesting to see as well. Next up, they're at Tennessee. Could be a tough game, going on the road against sort of a physical team, especially a frisky team like Tennessee, but they should be able to handle business there. And that will do it for this week. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of those favorite things, and I will see you in the next one.